All right, welcome to the show. We are going to be covering the rankings. This is the IDP Plus ranking show. You might have seen us in previous episodes doing a special series through the IDP Plus podcast. We have shifted now to the IDP Plus ranking show. And what we do is we're going through right now by position. This episode, we have the edge rusher tiers, and we're just going to talk about these rankings through from our site. And I'm here with my other hosts, Johnny Freakin' Fantasy and Brandon Lee TV. What is up, guys? Johnny, real quick, jump into where people can find you, a little bit of what you've been doing, because I know you're busy on the channel.
Absolutely, man. I've been pumping out a lot of videos. I'm co-hosting a show with Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and that's IDP plus Trends. I've been doing a lot of weekly videos on that, covering off-season content, free agency, franchise tags, all the way to draft combine moving into now. So if you haven't caught those episodes, catch me on there. You can find me on Twitter at Johnny Freakin F1. I'm here for you, here for the people. I answer your questions, start sits, do a lot of retweets of what the IDP Plus team has been doing. A lot of great content this offseason. I'm looking forward to getting a lot of good content out with the team this offseason and run it back for next year.
Awesome, man. And welcome back to the show, Brandon Lee TV. We had Sicoli in your spot for the last couple episodes, but here you are coming on. And what have you been up to, man?
Yeah, happy to be back. Hosting two podcasts, also away from this one for Believe, hosting Dukes of the Gridiron podcast, and then my namesake, Lava Brandon Blakeney. So covering just the biggest, freshest topics in sports. Definitely happy to be back, though, talking some fantasy football. It's getting that time. The Senior Bowls happened. We're getting ready for the NFL draft. The combine's coming. And Johnny, man, you've been killing the content. I know I reached out to you about some of the guys that you were talking about, some guys on my dynasty team that I was kind of wondering about, how their roles could potentially expand next year. So definitely shout out to you, man. But yeah, just staying busy. Happy to be back though, guys.
Big
Yeah,
ups, Brandon. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you here, and make sure you're following both of these guys on Twitter and checking out the channel with all of Johnny's awesome content with the IDP Plus Trends show, plus the shorts going out. You might see a little bit of a trend here with the way we title our shows as we've moved away, rebranded from IDP guys to IDP Plus. We're kind of launching all of these shows under that brand title. So, while you're checking out the channel, make sure to go to the website. And now you can go to idpplus.com and get to the site and become a subscriber. Right now, we have a special going on. Become a monthly subscriber starting the first month at $1. Make sure and go in there, become a monthly subscriber, use that mock draft promo code. If you get on the site, you'll see banner ads, and you click on it. It'll take you right in, give you that discount, and then you can join our Discord, see our articles that are paywalled, get into our tools, and really just supporting the content that we're putting out here. So become a subscriber, go to idpplus.com or idp.plus if you are so inclined, and become a subscriber. So with that, let's switch gears to the Edge Rusher tiers by Gary Van Dyke at the IDP Tipster. Make sure and follow him. He put this article. Now, this is part of our early off-season content plan where we went through and we did top 12s. We did tiers. We did combined rankings. All can be found on the website. And we're just kind of starting to finalize that series before we move on into some fresher rankings. Now that the season is starting to kick off, combine being done, the draft coming up. So with that, let's move into our tier 1. And for the audio listeners, we're going to start at number 1 with Max Crosby, Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Allen. At number 8, Brian Burns, Rashawn Gary, Daniil Hunter, Hassan Reddick, and at number 12, Carl Granderson. So, I don't know about you guys, but I find the edge rusher position to be the most dynamic and the players that I'm most looking at during a football game because they're exciting. What do you guys think? Are these the exciting names that you're looking at on the defense? Brandon, give me your thoughts on this first tier.
Yeah, when you talk about exciting and on the edge, Max Crosby is definitely the guy that I think about. Just the personality off the field, the personality on the field, just always getting in quarterbacks' heads, talking trash. It's nice to see him get his dues this last 2 seasons because he's been super productive for the last several seasons. But now I think people are kind of seeing him, even though the Raiders are struggling, they're seeing him on the main stage, perform in some big games. Of course, Micah Parsons continues to have a stellar career, still very young, kind of getting into those prime years now in his career. But the guy's just a physical specimen. And I think he's kind of redefined the position in his own way. And now he's kind of that prototype that guys are looking for on the outside in the draft. Love Aiden Hutchinson. Think he's got some JJ Watt in him. And then, you've got the guys, the Myles Garrett's, who defensive player of the year, TJ Watt, Madman. I think there's a good balance of like established players and guys that are entering their prime that we haven't seen peak yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And, TJ Watt, just pointing him out is how electric he has been over a number of years to the point that he's established, a number one status for past years. And this year he placed in the top 3 if you consider balanced scoring in IDP. If you're talking big play scoring, he is absolutely solid at the number 1 spot for edge rushers. Looking at this, Johnny, is age the factor for him being below Crosby, Parsons, and Bosa here, or do you think that Watt is going to kind of start showing some chinks in his armor, and this is more accurate just based off of skill level?
Well, first, to answer your question, I think it is a little bit due to age. I really like this top 5 and really top 8. I think top 5 is pretty cement there. Once you hit 9 or 10, there can be some discussion of who's at that point. But for Watt specifically, I would have him a little bit higher, might have him 2, if not 3. So, he got snubbed this year with that defensive player of the year. I don't think that really goes into the calculation here, but TJ Watt, I'm expecting great things. I think another 2 years, solid 2 years out of him. And we're not talking about a guy. What I think comes to mind when I'm looking at these top 5 guys, you got like a Myles Garrett, might have the edge if you're in a sack heavy league, or, he might climb the rankings. To me, guys like Max Crosby and TJ Watt, Nick Bosa is another guy who you're chasing sacks with, not really going to have a high tackle floor. But when we look at Max Crosby and TJ Watt specifically, if you're in a balanced league, or in a tackles heavy league, they get a little bit of a boost there. So to me, no, TJ Watt, he's bulletproof to me for the next 2-3 years. I draft him no problem in a startup. Love him in dynasty. Love him even more in redraft. A lot of these guys that we look at, number 9, number 11, number 12, Gary, Reddick, and Granderson, there's questions. Rashawn Gary, Brandon mentioned before, this is a guy who's young and can climb up the rankings. Maybe he has his best days ahead, but that's not a guarantee. And what is guaranteed is the way TJ Watt has been playing. I'm going to take that 10 days out of 10. So for me, I think he deserves to be a little bit higher. Maybe age comes into the play. Maybe the other guys are just showing out that well. But really, when you look at a guy who led the league in sacks, I think he had a better year than Garrett. He did get snubbed. The only thing is he got it once already, so maybe that's why Garrett gets it. But I mean, this top 5 is cement, is chalk. I love it, and I don't think it's impermeable. It can't be moved.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So Brandon, what do you think of this top 5? You kind of gave your overall thoughts on the tier as a whole, but like, would you shuffle any of these guys around? I know years where Myles Garrett was one. TJ Watt has been one in the past, but Max Crosby has a lot of excitement growing, and he's just kind of getting into his prime.
Yeah, I think Max Crosby for me would be my number one just because of the production standpoint and the consistency. And like you said, it seems like, he's really hitting his stride now. He's been productive, but now, we're all aware of what's going on down there in Vegas. Other than that, I really probably wouldn't touch the top five. I love that Myles Garrett had a bounce back year and continues to anchor a very strong Browns defense. I think he's been consistent. And, being a top draft pick and having like all the hype that he did coming in, he's faced some scrutiny, with that Browns team. But I think this year he really kind of cemented himself as that guy for them, as well as, one of the best pass rushers, one of the best game wreckers, I should say, in the league. Looking outside the top 10, I understand the age perspective, but if you're looking at production, I think more so than potential at 11 and 12, maybe. I'd probably maybe move Khalil Mack into like that top 12, maybe at 11, just based off what he's doing. I mean, this dude is aging like fine wine right now, the way he's producing. So that would be something I would look at. I think Brian Burns is one of those guys like Rashawn Gary who he's producing more than Rashawn Gary, but I think Brian Burns still hasn't peaked yet. Like we haven't seen him enter his prime yet. I think he's getting there. So I'm excited to see him continue to develop. And, he may be on the move. His contract situation is something to monitor right now. Not sure what the Carolina Panthers are going to do with that, but wherever he is, he has a chance to shine.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking into that just outside the top 10, and to point out Carl Granderson there at number 12, I want to call out for this was one of Gary's guys, Gary Van Dyke at the IDP Tipster. This was one of his call outs going into the last year. And to see that he had 9 top 12 performances in 2023 for edge rushers, and he was a called out breakout player. Do you see his name as a surprise in this first tier? And this one's to you, Brandon. I'm sorry, to you, Johnny. And so, like, is this a surprise name for people? Do you think that he should be at 12? Should he go down or should he come up?
Well, I think it's a good question. Let me preface this by saying this. I do think if Miami's two ends, their edge rushers, and Chubb and Phillips, if they didn't get hurt, I don't know if he'd be here. Maybe he'd still sneak in at number 12, but Hassan Reddick might be another guy in discussion who might move down there. But those two guys not being in our rankings because of the injuries they were dealt maybe gives Granderson that edge. It's nice to see him in tier 1. And what a great call by Gary. I mean, really, that was a hunch call because the stats wouldn't back that up. So really proud of the tipster there. Job well done. But Carl Granderson, one thing I want to say about him is every year, and if you know me, I'm a big tackles guy. And tackles, might not be the most penultimate, might not be the most important stat. You might be looking at the sacks, but a lot of times if players that like Myles Garrett, Bosa, if they don't get those sacks, they're not getting the tackles, right? That's what I mentioned before about Watt being bulletproof, Crosby being bulletproof. They just do it all. So really there's low risk with those guys. Whereas, even though we're talking about top 12 picks here, top 12 edge rushers, Myles Garrett and Bosa, those guys do have some risk to them, right? And Carl Granderson, somebody who, you don't have to break the bank and get 15 sacks. He got you 8.5 sacks this year. 78 tackles is tremendous. So every year of his career, the tackles have gone up. Now he's putting all the pieces together. If you can give me 10 sacks and 50 or more tackles, that's great. And guess what? Carl Granderson was at 8.5 sacks and 78 tackles. So that more than fits the bill. Great call again by the tipster to put him on this list. I really like it. 27 years old. It seems like the arrow is only trending up for this guy. So I really like it. I don't think he gets a lot of flowers, and it's nice to see him do so right here.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that, and now I'm going to go to you, Brandon, with Carl Granderson is, I feel like he's one of those guys that's going to be overlooked in drafts. Do you think, based off these rankings, him at 12 and then probably his ADP far lower than that, is he a prime, solid, like almost I don't want to call him a sleeper pick since he's kind of broken out, but like a value pick.
Yeah, I think absolutely. He's a guy that will be a valuable pick. You know, you can get him late. He's not going to be the first edge that you think of, but I think, you know, if you wait around too long, somebody will definitely scoop him. Like you said, he's broken through. He's a name that, like, you know, the average fan probably isn't aware of, and now they're looking at this show and they're looking at him on this board mentioned with some of these guys. So that's definitely going to up his stock. But yeah, I think a value pick, absolutely, because you're going to get a guy that you can start every week and not really have to worry about him producing. Like Johnny said, high ceiling, low floor with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you pointed out, you know, people getting to know about this player from this show, you know, on this tier. And listen, you know, if you're really, you know, into what we're doing and the you know, taking and consuming content, I highly recommend going to the Fantasy Football Expo in August. August, I think, is 9th through 11th this year, and come and meet us and take in not only our content and meet us, get a chance to go to our booth, but meet some of the big players in the industry. I know that Andy Behrens is going to be there, Jeff Manns. You got, if you're a big Scott Fishbowl fan, Scott Fish is widely available to talk to everybody. It is an amazing experience of just the community coming together, all in Canton, Ohio, that second weekend in August, right after you go and you watch the Hall of Fame game at the very same stadium. You'll get to be on the field and be part of a party. Johnny, I know this is going to be your first year going. You know, are you excited to go there and meet everybody?
Definitely, definitely. Let me just reiterate. You know, you mentioned the name Andy Behrens there. I mentioned the name IDP Tipster, right, and Gary. These are guys who, you know, I just started with the IDP Plus team in November. These are guys who've been writing, who've been credible for years, and to be in the same sentence, to be in the same presence as them, would be tremendous. And to me, that's what I'm looking forward to, is networking, getting to know people. I've been fortunate to be on a lot of podcasts with different people. I want to put the face to in person, right? I want to meet that person. Really, great company we have, IDP Plus. I know there's tremendous people out there that I haven't met yet, so I'm looking forward to that. I've only scratched the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And to, you know, to get tickets to view and get information on the event, go to thefantasyfootballexpo.com. Also, just want to plug that we are sponsoring a IDP league as part of Draft Night Out, which is an event where you can purchase a ticket, and it's a large gathering at a bar. We fill out the whole bar, and there's a fantasy football tournament, essentially. So you go, you get to draft in person. We are going to be hosting a IDP league there, so you'll get to draft not only offense but IDP. And so go to thefantasyfootballexpo.com and find that Draft Night Out button and go and get a ticket. Join it's the Lawrence Taylor division and become you know, a member of that league. But you know, over to you, Brandon, with you know, to kind of put you on the spot, man. You know, we talking all about how Johnny's gonna go. I've been there a few times. Are we gonna see you in Canton in August?
I'm looking at it like I was thinking about it as y'all were talking about it. Like, I've never been to Canton. It's funny that we bring this up because I'm actually going to Cooperstown tomorrow to go see the MLB Hall of Fame. So I'm making it a mission to try to go see all of them this year. So if I can swing it with my schedule, I'll definitely try. I know August I'm also going to Chicago for a journalism convention too. So I may have to double up and get out there for sure.
There you go. Nice. So opportunity to see Brandon as well. And listen, if you go to the NFL Hall of Fame, just know that, man, I could go there multiple days, multiple years. There's so much to see. So definitely, you know, if you're out there thinking about it, there's so much to do that weekend. And you get a chance to meet all of the creators in the industry, and you'll recognize just how welcoming the community is. But, you know, shifting gears here, let's get back to the show. and look at our tier 2 and all of these welcoming names right here, between at number 13, Chase Young, Alex Highsmith, Quiddy Pie, Trey Hendrickson, Jermaine Johnson, Kayvon Thibodeau, Jalen Phillips, Trayvon Walker at 20, Gregory Rousseau, Bradley Chubb, not Bradley Cooper, Jonathan Cooper, and at number 24, George Karlaftis. So Johnny, just to get your feel on this tier 2 list, like what are some of the names that are jumping out to you?
Man, a lot of young names, a lot of youth in here. Definitely Chase Young at 13. That's, I could see it. The pieces haven't been there. We've just got glimpses. Somebody who's not really gonna wow you in tackles, so there is a little bit of scare there to me. He's only 24 years old. I think he puts it all together eventually. So I like Chase Young. I predicted him to have half a sack or more in the Super Bowl on a podcast with Gary. He went and got me the sack, so I guess I got to talk a little nice on Chase Young. Yeah, I mean, he's had 7.5 sacks this year. Maybe with an off season that, he's a free agent right now, might sign a 1-year prove it deal. I'd like to see him have an off season in San Francisco. I think that's good for him. So Chase Young is a little bit high here, but hey, Gary made a good call with Granderson. Why not make it 2 for 2 with Chase Young? Another guy right next to him is Alex Highsmith. I really like Highsmith. Kind of had a down year this year. He only had 7 sacks, 57 tackles, but in his 4 years played so far, he's had 242 tackles. That's over 60 a year. And the sacks have been there. In those 4 years, he's had 29.5. So to me, if you can get over 6-7 sacks and get 50-plus tackles, that's serviceable. I think Alex Highsmith a little bit regressed this year, but with TJ Watt getting older, drawing all that attention, he's definitely a name to reappear this upcoming season. Trey Hendrickson, guy who had 17.5 sacks this year, tremendous. Not going to really help you too much with the tackles. I think he's below averaging 40 most of his years, so that's not great. But definitely somebody to see you get your sacks if that's what you're chasing. Jermaine Johnson, I think that's a player who could be even better next year. He had a great sophomore season. Thibodeau is very well rounded. He had 11.5 sacks this year, 50-plus tackles. Again, over 10 sacks, 50 tackles, check. So I like him a lot. And then my boy Jalen Phillips, man, it was a shame. Let me just point this out. I think this kind of goes overlooked here. And I mentioned Jalen Phillips as somebody who could have been in that tier 1. Jalen Phillips, right? He only played half the season. He played 8 games, but in those 8 games, he had 6.5 sacks. He had 43 tackles, right? So easy math here. If you double that and just call it a full season, that would have had 13 sacks and 86 tackles. To me, when we look at the numbers, that's up there with the Max Crosby, 90 tackles. He almost hit it. 14.5 sacks, Max Crosby. He almost matched that, right? Nick Bosa, yep, Jalen Phillips would have had more sacks then, would have had more tackles then. So Jalen Phillips, man, and when it's all said and done, it is an Achilles. So I'll let the fantasy listeners and viewers dictate that for their own, what they make of that injury. That's a huge injury. That's the biggest there is. So with his uncertainty going into next year, probably not going to be available to start the season. It's a big, we have a 19 here. He could be 12 or higher eventually if he comes back. Well, he could drop down even further depending on how long it takes him to get back, how well he's performing. But I just wanted to put it into notice how well he was doing this year, how close to stardom he reached.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was devastating for a lot of teams based off of how he came up during the season, how great he was doing. And look, I was even watching the Hard Knocks on the Miami Dolphins, and they showed like him progressing through the weeks, and then that injury, and it was just hard to watch even.
Right, and Chubb too. Chubb could be a riser. Somebody that the ACL, another one.
Yeah, he tore it too.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. You touched on a couple of my questions, so I'm going to throw these over to Brandon. One of them being Chase Young, had 0 top 12 finishes after being traded to the 49ers. Johnny touched on this, but do you think he bounces back with a full offseason with the 49ers?
I really hope so, because I thought that I was disappointed in his season last year. I thought, he would be rejuvenated, going to one of the best defenses, probably the best defense in the league. He's playing across from Nick Bosa, who's getting a lot of that attention. So this should have been his year to just play free. He should have been able to play free because this is the first time in his career where he's not the focal point of the opposition trying to shut him down. He's getting to play second fiddle to another guy. So I thought, that pressure being taken off of him would motivate him a bit more, let him play a little bit more free. But it seemed like, he just wasn't in the best shape, maybe because he was taking plays off at times. But with a full offseason with them and getting to almost taste that Super Bowl, yeah, I think he comes back really motivated. I think he'll come back and, be more comfortable with this scheme. Hopefully, him and that defensive line are continuing to build that chemistry. And, I think he's, like Johnny said, he's still a young guy. He hasn't really entered the prime years. And I think the most important takeaway from last year is that it's been the most healthy he's been in the last couple of years as well. So I think, he could definitely has a good chance to bounce back. I like him.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's awesome. So something that Johnny touched on was the fact that you placed a bet on Chase Young to go over that sack on a show with the tipster for the Super Bowl, and I just want to make a plug here on a piece of content that's coming out on the IDP Plus channel, Sports Betting 101 with Sebastian Farron. Definitely be checking out our channel for more content on betting. And Johnny, I'm sure you're going to get into it a little bit with the Trends show and what you're doing with Gary, but kind of looking also, you mentioned Trey Hendrickson and you got into some of that, but he ended the year as a top 3 defensive lineman. And go into it a little bit more on what could be holding him back from being a tier 1 player.
This is Hendrickson, correct?
Yeah, Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, so the fact that he's getting a little bit older, 29 years old, going to be 30 at some point next season. So I think that might have some hesitations. It kind of took him a while to get going. Once he had a year or two in there at Cincinnati, he really started to blossom. Did have 17 and a half sacks this year, but 43 tackles. And over his 7 years, he's only had 174 tackles. So really, the flash of the sacks wasn't there at the beginning, and I think it took a while for people to buy in. Once he gets to Cincinnati, he has Sam Hubbard there to complement him. Sam Hubbard's more of like the tackles guy. Trey Hendrickson is that high floor sack guy. So, I think age in relativity to the production early in his career kind of had some hesitancy. But at 29 years old, in the prime of his career, coming off 17 and a half sacks, that takes heat, So this is definitely somebody who's not under the radar anymore. I think he has a good 2 or 3 years left, at least in him. So, somebody who's not going to get you many tackles, a little bit of volatility there because of that. But if you're chasing sacks, if you're in a league where you get 7 or more points a sack, definitely Trey Hendrickson is higher on your list than right here.
Gotcha. Nice. So Brandon, to round out this tier 2, I gave Johnny the opportunity to kind of look at these players, and I just want to see like who stands out for you.
Yeah, definitely Tibbs. I have him on my dynasty team. I think he's continued to be a game wrecker. He's getting better every year. Still not near his prime, but like he's a guy that's gonna, get sacks. He's gonna get tackles. He's got the potential to catch an interception. He's athletic. He's got good hands. So he's a guy that I definitely would recommend, getting sooner than later if you have the opportunity. I know we touched on Alex Highsmith, and he was kind of a boomer bust this year. He had some really good games. I have him on my team as well, and he has some really good games. And he was a guy that, if your starter was on bye or you had some injuries, he could fill in for a couple of weeks. This year, maybe he gets back to being that more consistent guy that you can start week to week, or at least rotate a little bit more because, he's like a third option right now. And then, looking at the injuries to the Dolphins DNs, that was really tough to watch. Bradley Chubb coming over from free agent, just a monster. Was having a good year. Their pass rush, you could tell how impacted that defense was when those two guys were not able to take the field. They kind of fell apart, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think it's a solid group overall. I think Trayvon Walker is another guy that, hasn't entered his prime, came into the year with a lot of hype, being a top draft pick. I think he's a guy that can continue to progress and, just be more consistent and productive.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's switch on
Hey, Nate, you
to
mind if I say one more thing? I want to touch on one thing real quick.
go for it.
Actually, two things. Greg Russo, I like him. He's maybe like that tipster, how he called him to have a next better year. I think that might be in play for Greg Russo. Still young, really don't have much in Buffalo there to hold him back. So I like him to jump next year. And I just want to say Jonathan Cooper, we didn't mention him, but definitely somebody who's flying under the radar. This year he had 72 tackles and 8.5 sacks. And while it was a little bit of an outlier for his career, he's only 26, and this was his first time starting more than 9 games. So I think Jonathan Cooper really has I'm buying into his stat sheet, what he provided this year.
Nice. All right. So switching over to our final tier, which is tier 3, between the 25 to 36 range. So for the audio listeners, Michael Holt at 25, Andrew Van Ginkel, Will Anderson, Josh Sweat, Sam Hubbard, Montez Sweat, Boye Mafe, Joey Bosa, Harold Landry, Bryce Huff, Yaya Diaby, and Uchenna Nwosu. I think I stuck the landing on that. But, going to you, Johnny, looking at Joey Bosa, is age finally catching up to him? Is that why he's, if you go back years past, Joey Bosa has been in that top 5, top 10 range, and now we see him at 32. Is that the age just kind of catching up to him?
I think it's a mixture. And I'm torn on this myself. Joey Bosa, 28 years old. I just gave a vote of confidence to TJ Watt at 29 years old, right, for a couple more years. So Joey Bosa, I don't think it's really so much the age. I think it's the fact that, you combine the age, and really it's a bad taste in our mouth. As a player gets older and they start to dwindle their stats, obviously nobody beats age, right? But that's a bad look. But at the same time, Joey Bosa, he missed 14 games the last 2 seasons. So to me, it's really tough to gauge. I think if I'm in a startup league where I can get Joey Bosa this late, if for 1 or 2 years of good play, if he's falling, I'll take that. I'm not going to invest too much in him. He's not somebody I'm going out in Dynasty and making a trade for. At the same time, you're probably not going to get much offering him up. So, yeah, Joey Bosa, if you have him, it's a hold right now. You got to hope that he returns to his former self. He's had some nice years. He's over his 8 years, he's had 321 tackles, and that's with the last 2 seasons being almost nullified. So Joey Bosa, when he's at his best, is a great player, not only in sacks but in tackles too. So it's tough. I do think the age plays a little bit to factor here, but it's what you know of him. If you want to say, hey, really, he got snubbed those last 2 years, and I think he's going to bounce back, then you're not putting too much stock into the age. But it's really up to interpretation here, and I'd like to see him bounce back, but it's far from a given.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Brandon? That age and injury factor really kind of playing, a part here with driving him down. What are your thoughts on Joey Bosa?
Yeah, I'm thinking, with Jim Harbaugh coming there, hopefully it rejuvenates this entire defense because they have a lot of talent. I think it'll be good for Joey Bosa. Harbaugh coaches the defense hard. They're going to be physical. I think the biggest thing for him is going to be availability because, it's not a talent thing and he's not super ancient. It's not like he's, in his 30s or anything like that. It's just we've had multiple years where we haven't really seen him play a lot of football, and there's another Bosa in the family that is completely just taking the shine from him. But I think, make no mistake about it, I think Joey Bosa could absolutely bounce back under Jim Harbaugh, and I think they'll have a rejuvenated defense, and I think, they're going to have something to prove, especially Bosa.
Nice. So Johnny, coming back to you, looking at this final tier, are there any diamonds here that stand out to you?
Yeah, I'm going to say 3 and perhaps more, depending on, Diaby, Huff, Mafe. Which way are they going to go, up or down? So those 3 are like perhaps. Definitely Will Anderson at 27, I think is a little bit low. Just the potential is too high for him, especially when we're talking about dynasty. Haven't really put much pen to paper yet. 7 sacks, 45 tackles. That's not stellar, but it's a good start. So Will Anderson, if you're believing in him, I think he's a snub here. He might be able to get a little higher, diamond in the rough. But 2 guys I'm really looking at stats wise, and that's on number 30 and number 33. Montez Sweat, 27 and a half years old. He actually had 12 and a half sacks this year. That's top 10 in the NFL. So he's down here at 30, right? Then you look at quarterback hits. He had 25, again, top 10 in the NFL. When I look at tackles, my biggest, volatility factor is he going to give me headaches some week? Well, he had 57 tackles. So again, if you can get me 10 or more sacks, 12 and a half, you can give me 50 or more tackles, 57, boom. So I really like Montez Sweat. I think he deserves to be a little bit higher here. And another guy, maybe because he had a lost year, 2022, but really had a great year this year again, and only at 27 years old. I think there's a lot of value in Harold Landry. And if he's flying under the radar, I'm buying. If he's flying under this low, 10 and a half sacks this season. In his 5 years, he's had 41 and a half. So he's at 8 sacks a year at the, averaging. Then you look at the tackles, man, 70 tackles this season over those 5 years, 326. And actually the last 4 years, he's averaged 70 or more tackles and 9.25 sacks over those last 4 years. The 5th year would have been his rookie year, but I'm looking at those last 4 really good averages. Did have a lost year last year in 2022, I should say 2 years ago. But yeah, Harold Landry, I think that if you can get him this low, what a wonderful pick.
Nice. Yeah. So Brandon, also looking to you here let's round out this this tier, this show. What are the diamonds that you're seeing this late in the rankings? Anyone that you want to plant your flag on?
Honestly, if you're just talking about getting value and upside late, because I do think that there are more productive players on this list, certainly. And there are players that have more upside when you look at Will Anderson, but Yaya Diaby, rookie season last year, 7.5 sacks. If you're chasing sacks, I think he's a guy that could be really beneficial that you could get late. That has a chance to get double-digit sacks this year if he's continued to be given those opportunities. I don't know. I think the jury's still out on how involved he'll be in the tackle game as far as like runs, getting tackles, because he only had, I think, 22 this past season. So if he can, up that, I think his value will be way more increased across the board, especially in redraft. But looking at him from that perspective of just if you're chasing sacks, I think he's a guy that could really surprise some people this upcoming season.
Nice.
Well, and only started 7 games, so there's room to grow.
Yeah, 7.5 sacks, 7 games. Just production, and he's a rookie. He's coming into year 2, so I think he's got a lot of upside, man. If you're Mitch, I know Will Anderson gets the headlines, deservingly so, but I think he's a guy that Diaby that could make some noise for sure.
Cool. Well, there it is. We've gone through our 3 tiers for edge rushers for the rankings. I really want to thank my co-hosts for joining the show and going through this, providing the analysis. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, ITB Plus, and take in our content, but also check back for next week when we go into wide receiver tiers and start talking about some of maybe my favorite player in Amon-Ra St. Brown here, but just a little preview of what I'm thinking about. But yeah, hit that subscribe button, hit the little notification bell, and make sure that you're getting all of those awesome videos and shorts coming directly to you. Real quick before we wrap up here, I want to go around and Johnny, tell everyone where they can find your content, where they can follow you.
Absolutely. You can find my content. I'm on Twitter at Johnny freaking F1. Shout out to the IDP tipster and you, Nate, for getting me started with the IDP Plus Trends show. Yeah, I want to say just before we leave here, know your scoring too. Know your scoring. Like I said, I tried to give you multiple angles here. If you're a tackles heavy guy, adjust those rankings based on the guys who are getting tackles. If you're chasing sacks, adjust the rankings on sacks, potential sacks. But this is a really nice list. Shout out to the tipster. Give me a follow if you haven't already. Looking forward to being on the upcoming shows and looking forward to 2024 coming at you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a big year for us. And Brandon, welcome to the team. Welcome to the show. And where can people find you?
Definitely. Happy to be back once again, guys. You can find me at Brandon Lee TV on all social media platforms as well as YouTube. And yeah, I'll be continuing to crank out the content here with you guys and writing articles as well, giving some great insight as we get closer and closer to the NFL draft and the 2024 NFL season.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to follow me, I'm at Nate Cheat on Twitter. I will be honest, I'm the computer guy making all of this stuff happen. So, follow me if you want insights on how to be a good creator. And I follow the Lions pretty exclusively. So, hear my opinions on what they're doing good and what they're doing wrong. But follow these guys for the fantasy football advice, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching this IDP Guys video. If you like this content and you want more fantasy football content, click here. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos to help you master your IDP league, click here to subscribe.